Sage had a simple plan for her Tuesday. Work a double at the Gilded Glass, avoid her landlord's notes about the dying ficus, eat something not dehydrated. The plan did not include a feral toddler in the woods. Definitely not the toddler's father, a man built like someone had crossbred a mountain with a cologne ad. But plans collapsed at the first sign of weather. The path through the woods behind her apartment cut 10 minutes off her bus walk, usually empty. The squirrels liked her. She'd had a cat named Kevin follow her for a week. A small child sat on a mossy log, barefoot, covered in mud. Silver blue eyes tracked a beetle like a bomb disposal expert. Sage stopped. Something deep screamed vulnerable, small, yours to protect. A tiny human. What are the protocols? She approached slowly. Lost? The girl watched. She sighed. Her bartender instincts kicked in. You couldn't leave a small creature. Okay, you're coming with me. The girl didn't want to be carried, going rigid, but she slipped her tiny hand into Sage's with a grip that said, I have selected you. The walk back was silent. She could smell the girl, something clean underneath the dirt. Sage had always had a sharp nose. This scent was different. Inside, the girl investigated everything below knee height. Coffee table leg, TV remote, shoe. She tried to eat a coaster. Sage called 911. I found a child, about 3. She won't talk. She's eating my furniture. She held up dino nuggets. The girl's eyes went wide. This one's got standards. She found a t-shirt and washed the mud. The girl endured it with cat-like dignity. Officer Henderson arrived and asked questions. No answers. No missing children reported. We can take her to protective services. The girl growled. Not cute. A low, guttural, sub-bass rumble. She scrambled behind Sage's legs, gripping her jeans, her face pressed into the back of Sage's knee. Another growl. A warning. Henderson reconsidered several life choices. Maybe she stays here? Sage's voice was higher. Just for a bit? A few hours, Henderson sighed. Sage pulled out finger paints. Lila, the name arriving with certainty, took to them with silent passion. She painted a purple wolf eating a yellow house. Very bitey. She went back to work, painting 14 wolves. Each ate something different. The last was a suited person. Then the knock came. A knock that said, I own this zip code. Sage opened the door. The man filled the frame. Impossibly tall. His silver blue eyes stopped her, fixed on her with predatory focus. She could smell him. Pine, winter, fear. She just knew the way she always knew things. His gaze flickered past her. Control shattered. Relief. Lila, he breathed. The name came out broken. Not the way you say a name. The way you say a prayer you didn't think would be answered. Behind her, Sage heard a chair scrape. Small feet. And then Lila was pushing past her legs, and for one blazing second, Sage thought the little girl was running to her father. She wasn't. Lila stopped 3 feet from him, crossed her arms, and gave him a look of such withering, nuclear disappointment that Sage felt second-hand shame on behalf of the entire concept of fatherhood. The man, this enormous, terrifying, clearly powerful man, flinched. Actually flinched. Like a 3-year-old's disapproval was a physical blow. Lila, he said again, softer. He dropped to one knee, bringing himself closer to her level. I'm here. I found you. Lila's lower lip trembled, just once. Then she turned on her heel, walked back to Sage, and wrapped herself around Sage's legs like a barnacle with a grudge. The silence that followed was extraordinary. Then Sage's brain caught up with her heart, and the bartender took over. She stepped back, positioning herself between the man and Lila. A move so instinctive she didn't think about it until she'd already done it. Stop. You show up knowing this child's name. How did you find this apartment? I had help, tracking her. The police found nothing. Either you didn't report her missing or you have resources they don't. She blocked the door. Who are you? I am her father. Someone took her from our home and left her here, deliberately, he swallowed. She's been missing for 48 hours. Not lost. Taken. Someone kidnapped her? Yes. Why not the police? The people who took her are not people the police can find. Her nose told her he was telling the truth. Core of it, real. I'm calling Officer Henderson. She called. He confirmed. Identity legitimate. The private security firm was handling it. You checked out, she said. And for the record, I Have Enemies is a Netflix documentary trailer. Something cracked in his expression. I understand, he said. And I owe you more than I can explain right now. But first, may I? He gestured toward Lila, still clinging to Sage's legs. She might have an opinion about that. He knelt, slowly, and said his daughter's name like a man relearning a prayer he'd thought had gone unanswered. Lila looked at him, looked at Sage, tightened her grip on Sage's jeans, then, in her own time, at her own pace, she let one hand go and reached for her father. He took her hand like it was made of glass. She hasn't eaten a vegetable in 4 hours, Sage said, because the silence was getting unbearable and deflection was the only crisis management tool she had. And she licked my TV remote. I think she's fine, but you should probably know that about her. Ren looked up at her from his knees, his daughter's hand in his, and she saw something raw and terrifying in his silver eyes, gratitude so deep it looked like it might drown him. Do you want some juice? Sage added, because she literally could not stop herself. We have apple, it comes in a box. His mouth opened, closed, opened again. He looked like a man whose operating system had just encountered an error it wasn't designed to handle. Juice, he repeated. There's a straw, she confirmed. And that was how the most powerful wolf on the continent ended up sitting at Sage Alden's wobbly kitchen table, drinking apple juice from a box with a tiny straw, while his daughter pointedly ignored him and painted her 15th wolf. And Sage sat across from them, watching this enormous, secretive, clearly dangerous man drink a juice box and thought, I have so many questions. And this man is not going to answer a single one of them tonight. She was right, but he'd come back, and so would the questions. Ren hadn't breathed for 48 hours. One directive, find the cub. Marin had been dead for 18 months. The trail was wrong, too professional. Someone had carried Lila through running water, doubled back, laid false lines. Wolves who knew how to break a track. Ivar. The name sat in his chest like a coal. The guards registered Lila's shift too late. Ivar's people had been watching for weeks. Coordinated, professional. 6 wolves. Then, a young patrol wolf caught Lila's scent near an apartment complex. Faint, settled. Ren was there in minutes. The trail led to a door. He could hear Lila inside, a tiny giggle. He knocked. The door opened and the world tilted on its axis. 20 minutes and 3 juice boxes. Sage knelt eye level with Lila. You gotta go with your dad. No. Yes. My juice box. There was a clear threat in that small voice. Sage found another juice box. He gets you tomorrow, Sage offered. You can come back. We can paint more wolves. Lila considered this with the gravity of a war council. Then she held out her tiny hand. Repossess my soul? What? Until tomorrow. You repossess my soul. That's not how... Sage stopped. She looked at Ren. He looked like someone had very recently punched him in the face with good news. Okay, I repossess your soul. Until tomorrow. They shook on it. The moment the door closed, Sage slid to the floor, her back against it. Her phone buzzed. Did you survive the feral toddler apocalypse? Need me to bring wine and/or bail money? Chloe. An hour later, Chloe was sitting on Sage's kitchen counter, her legs swinging, wine in hand, listening with the rapt attention of a woman hearing the best story of her life.
So let me get this straight,
Chloe said, pointing her wine glass at Sage for emphasis. You find a magical forest child. You feed her the sacred food of her people, and then her dad shows up, and he's a 6'5" slab of grumpy, well-dressed man candy who looks at you like you're the last bottle of water in the Sahara? He looked at me like I was a math problem. A math problem he wanted to solve, Sage. With his body. With his teeth, actually. It was a very teeth-forward stare. Even better, Chloe slapped the counter. This is it. This is the thing. The universe is done watching you date bass players who think owning a mattress is too much commitment. I'm not. Chloe, he's just a dad. A very intense dad whose child I accidentally fostered for an afternoon. And he drank a juice box at my kitchen table, while his daughter painted wolves eating people. Chloe's eyes went wide. That child is a visionary. The last wolf was eating a man in a suit. She seemed very pleased about it. I love her. I love her, and I love this situation. And I love that you're pretending you didn't notice his forearms. I didn't notice his forearms. Sage, I noticed his eyes. They were... She stopped. She'd been about to say something weird. Something about how she could still smell him faintly lingering in her apartment, pine and winter air, and how the smell made her feel settled in a way that didn't make sense. She'd been about to say that she'd smelled his fear and his relief, and that she'd known in her body, the exact second his terror had broken. They were pretty, she finished lamely. Chloe studied her for a long, knowing moment, then mercifully let it go. He's coming back, you know. Why would he come back? Because the magical forest child has chosen you, and hot grumpy dad has no choice but to obey. Now, she hopped off the counter. What are you going to wear for your first official playdate with a mysterious millionaire? Sage threw a dish towel at her. But later, cleaning the last of the paint from the floor, she couldn't shake the feeling. Not about Ren, though that was there too. That presence, that weight, that way he'd said Lila like the word itself could shatter. It was about herself. Something was different. The apartment felt too loud. The refrigerator hummed at a frequency she'd never noticed before. The ficus in the hallway, the one her landlord kept threatening her about, smelled like it was dying. A specific vegetal distress she could suddenly identify as not enough drainage, root rot, second shelf from the left. She stood in her kitchen for a long time, hands still damp from cleaning, and listened to the world being slightly too much of itself. Then she went to bed and dreamed of running through woods she didn't recognize, low to the ground, faster than her legs should carry her. The ride home was a silent war of wills. Lila sat in her car seat with her arms crossed and her lower lip deployed at maximum tactical extension. She stared out the window with the tragic air of a deposed queen being driven into exile. Every few minutes she would sigh, a tiny, devastating exhalation that communicated volumes about the injustice of the universe. In the passenger seat, Marcus was doing the thing where he said nothing very loudly. She seems fond of the human, he finally ventured. She was frightened. The woman offered her sanctuary. The woman offered her dinosaur-shaped chicken nuggets and finger paints, Marcus said, his voice carefully neutral, which apparently constitutes sanctuary in the Toddler Geneva Convention. Ren's hands tightened on the steering wheel. His wolf, which had been quiet since they'd left the apartment, chose this moment to speak. She offered us juice, it observed, with the reverent tone of a sommelier recalling a particularly good vintage. From a box, with a straw. Ren told his wolf, told himself, to focus on the road. She smelled like home, his wolf added, ignoring the instruction with its usual diplomatic grace. Like the good version of everything. Ren, Marcus's voice had shifted. Careful. What aren't you telling me? The woman is important to Lila's recovery. She has a calming presence. This was not a lie. Every word was true. It was also approximately 4% of the relevant information. You want to arrange playdates, Marcus said slowly. For the heir to the Northern Kingdom. With a random human bartender. Yes. Marcus was quiet for a moment. Does this have anything to do with the fact that you've been sitting in her kitchen for the last hour, smelling like a man who just found religion? No. Or the fact that you haven't growled at a single person since we left her apartment, which is the longest streak in 18 months? I don't growl at people. You growled at the barista yesterday, the one who made your coffee too slowly. He was... Wren stopped. He had, in fact, growled at the barista. The playdates are for Lila. Of course they are, Marcus said, with the gentle patience of a man defusing a bomb he could see perfectly well. I'll add Royal Playdate Coordinator to my duties, right under Prevents the Alpha King from starting unnecessary wars. From the back seat, Lila huffed. It sounded, impossibly, like agreement. 2 days later, the knock came again. Softer this time. Less declaration of war, more polite territorial claim. Sage opened the door to Wren, in dark jeans and a gray Henley that should have been illegal on a man with those shoulders. He was holding Lila's hand. Lila was holding a single, slightly wilted daisy. The moment Lila saw Sage, she released her father's hand and launched herself forward. The hug, arms around knees, face pressed into denim, whole body committed, hit Sage like a gut punch of pure, uncomplicated love. "Hey, Nugget," she whispered, ruffling Lila's hair. "Missed you." Lila squeezed tighter, then she pulled back, looked up at Sage, and spoke her first word. More. The word was barely a whisper, soft as tissue paper, but it was a word, a real word, directed at a person after 6 months of silence. Behind Lila, Wren went completely still. His face did something Sage couldn't watch too closely because it would make her cry. A spasm of raw, unguarded emotion that he shut down almost instantly, but not before she saw it. Not before she smelled it. A wave of something so sharp and bright it was almost painful. Gratitude. The desperate kind. The kind that tastes like salt. "More painting?" Sage asked, her voice carefully steady. "More nuggets?" Lila considered this with the gravity of a Supreme Court justice. "More," she repeated, and pointed at Sage's apartment. "I think she means more... everything," Sage said, stepping aside to let them in. "I brought supplies," Wren said, gesturing to a grocery bag the size of a small refrigerator. He carried it to the kitchen counter and began unloading it with the focused efficiency of a man who had Googled, "What do humans eat?" and purchased everything that came up. Organic juice boxes, artisan fruit snacks, a sourdough loaf the size of Sage's head, 3 types of hummus, a wheel of brie, and at the bottom of the bag, like a punchline waiting for its moment, a whole, uncut pineapple. Sage held up the pineapple. "For the toddler?" "For general use." "General pineapple use." "My beta may have overestimated the requirements." "Your beta thinks toddlers need whole pineapples?" A faint hint of color rose in Wren's cheeks. It was the most human thing she'd seen him do, and it was devastatingly attractive. He compiled a list. A list that included an entire pineapple? The list was comprehensive. Sage turned the pineapple over in her hands. It was a beautiful pineapple, clearly expensive. She had never in her life received a pineapple from a man, and she wasn't sure what the etiquette was. "Thank you," she said, setting it on the counter next to the brie. "My apartment has never been this well provisioned. I think your beta might be a better provider than every man I've ever dated." His wolf said, "We could provide better. We could provide an elk. A large one." Wren did not relay this information. The afternoon unfolded like something from a life Sage had never had. Lila painted, wolves, always wolves, each one eating something new and increasingly ambitious. A car, a tree, what appeared to be a filing cabinet. Sage painted alongside her, their elbows bumping, their silence comfortable and warm. Wren stood sentinel by the kitchen counter, a mug of coffee untouched in his hands. He watched them with an expression Sage was learning to read, not just the brooding exterior, but the layers underneath. The way his shoulders dropped an inch when Lila laughed. The way his eyes tracked Sage's hands when she painted, as if the simple act of her making something was fascinating to him. "You could join us," Sage said, holding up a brush. "There's room." He looked at the brush like it was a live grenade. "No." "Come on, you can paint a wolf. Everyone's doing it. It's the hot new thing." "I don't paint." "You don't paint yet. Growth mindset." He didn't smile, but the corner of his mouth twitched, and Sage mentally chalked it up as a win. Then Lila did something that changed the room. She had been working on her latest wolf. This one was green, for reasons known only to Lila. When she stopped, studied it, and carefully added a small figure next to the wolf, a stick person with brown hair. She held it up to Wren, pointed to the stick person. "Sage," she said. Then she pointed to the wolf. She looked at her father, and she waited. Wren's throat moved. He reached out and took the painting with hands that weren't quite steady. "It's beautiful, pup." Lila nodded, obviously, and went back to work. Sage, who had turned away to give him the moment, busied herself arranging the brie on a plate she'd been meaning to throw out. Her eyes burned. Her nose burned worse. She could smell everything in the room with sudden, overwhelming clarity. The paint, the coffee, the pineapple's sharp sweetness. Wren's scent, which today was less ragged, warmer, with an undertow of something she couldn't name that made her want to move closer to him. She blinked hard, focused on the brie. "This is fine," she told herself. "You're just a bartender who can smell emotions. This is a completely normal thing that happens to completely normal people." She didn't notice that Lila had gone quiet until she heard the crash. She spun to find Lila standing over the wreckage of the sugar bowl, which she had apparently dragged off the counter through a feat of engineering involving 2 stacked books and a dish towel. Sugar was everywhere. Lila was holding a single sugar cube in each fist, her face a mask of total, unrepentant triumph. "Lila," Wren said. His voice was very controlled. Lila looked at him, slowly, deliberately, maintaining eye contact with the raw power of a hostage negotiator. She put a sugar cube in her mouth. "Lila, no." She put the second sugar cube in her mouth. "She gets this from you," Sage told Wren, who looked like a man watching his entire kingdom crumble in real time. "She gets this from her mother," he said quietly, and then caught himself, the words hanging in the air between them. Sage didn't push. She just knelt and started sweeping sugar, and after a moment, Wren knelt beside her. Their hands brushed over the dustpan. Neither of them moved away. The visits became a rhythm. Every few days, Wren would appear at her door, Lila in tow, a flimsy excuse on his lips, and a bag of groceries that suggested Marcus's shopping lists were becoming increasingly unhinged. "She missed the specific quality of light in your apartment," he'd say, his face completely straight, while Lila was already past him and heading for the paints. Or, "Her stuffed bear, Sir Reginald, requested a playdate with your throw pillows." Or, once, with the quiet desperation of a man at the end of his rope, "She drew you a picture and she will not stop looking at the door." Each time, Sage let them in. Each time, her apartment became a little more like something she didn't have a word for. Not just a place to crash between shifts, something warmer, something with people in it who came back. Lila was unfurling like a flower someone had forgotten to water. She hummed while she painted, a tuneless, meandering melody that made Wren go very still every time. She said more words. "Blue. More. Sage. No." The no was directed exclusively at Wren, deployed with devastating tactical precision whenever he tried to get her to eat a vegetable, leave the apartment, or stop feeding crackers to the hallway ficus. And she was naughty, gloriously, comprehensively, creatively naughty, in the way only a 3-year-old with the instincts of a wolf pup and the impulse control of a caffeinated squirrel could be. She bit Marcus. This happened during a visit where Marcus had accompanied Wren, ostensibly to assess the security of the location, but actually, Sage suspected, to get a look at the woman his boss had been obsessed with for weeks. Marcus was a tall, composed man, with the bearing of someone who had seen a great deal of absurdity and made peace with it. He'd offered Lila a dignified handshake. Lila had bitten his thumb. Not hard enough to break skin, just hard enough to make a point. She'd then retreated behind Sage's legs and given Marcus a look that communicated very clearly, "I have claimed this human. Adjust your expectations accordingly." Marcus had looked at his thumb, then at Wren, then at Sage, and said with perfect calm, "I see the family resemblance." Another time, during a perfectly peaceful painting session, Lila had somehow gotten into Sage's closet, found a pair of high heels Sage hadn't worn since college, and emerged wearing them with a sense of occasion that suggested she was about to address a parliament. She'd then clomped her way around the apartment in them for 20 minutes, periodically pausing to give Wren a look of such regal authority that he'd actually straightened up in his chair. "She's going to be a problem," Sage said, watching Lila attempt to climb the couch in 4-inch heels. "She is already a problem," Wren said, but the way he said it was soft. And when Lila toppled off the couch and landed on a pile of throw pillows, deliberately, because she'd arranged them there first, because she was a tiny, evil genius, he laughed. It was the first time Sage had heard him laugh. A real laugh, surprised out of him, rough from disuse. It changed his entire face, loosened the hard angles, crinkled the corners of his eyes, turned him from a brooding king into a man who had just watched his daughter outsmart gravity. Sage's heart did something it had never done before. Not a lurch, not a tap dance. Something quieter. Something that settled. For Wren, these visits were a slow and merciless undoing. Being near Sage was like standing in the sun after a lifetime in the shadows. His wolf, the part of him that had been running on pure survival adrenaline for 18 months, was calmer in her apartment than in his own territory. It settled. It stopped scanning for threats and started noticing things instead. The way she laughed with her whole body, the specific shade of brown in her eyes when she was teasing him, the shape of her hands when she painted. "She is ours," his wolf observed, with the matter-of-fact certainty of a tax assessment. She was not theirs. She was a human bartender who didn't know she was standing in the presence of the Alpha King, and didn't know she was an Omega whose wolf was dormant beneath her skin. She was not his to claim, not his to want, not his to build a future around. But his wolf didn't care about any of that. His wolf had filed Sage under essential and was not accepting counter-arguments. The hellish part was hiding. Every instinct screamed at him to tell her the truth. About himself, about her, about the bond he could feel forming between them, like a rope being woven one strand at a time. Instead, he sat in her kitchen, drinking juice boxes from a straw, and pretended to be a normal man with a normal life and a perfectly normal reason for bringing his daughter to a bartender's apartment 4 times a week. Marcus was not fooled. "You've been to the city 4 times this week," Marcus observed, not looking up from a stack of treaty documents. "The Eastern Pack thinks you're planning an invasion. The Southern Pack thinks you've developed a crippling addiction to human coffee. My presence is required for Lila's well-being." "And does Lila's well-being require you to know her caretaker's favorite pastry? Because the Royal Bakery called, you placed a standing order for almond croissants." Wren had no response. "Every Tuesday," Marcus continued, "a dozen, hand-delivered, in a box with a ribbon. Lila likes croissants. Lila is 3. She likes things she can bite, which, as my thumb can attest, includes human fingers." Marcus looked up. "Wren, you are the most powerful wolf on the continent, and you are completely, embarrassingly whipped by a woman who doesn't even know your last name." "She doesn't need to know our last name," his wolf supplied helpfully. She needs to know our scent, which she already does. She leaned toward us on Tuesday. She is aware of us on a biological level. This is excellent progress. The croissants stay, Wren said. Marcus sighed the sigh of a beta who had accepted his fate. Of course they do. One rainy Thursday, the storm broke. Not the metaphorical one, though that was coming too. An actual storm, the kind that turned the sky to slate and the streets to rivers. Wren had shown up with Lila bundled under his jacket, both of them soaked, and the power had gone out before Sage could even close the door. Her apartment went dark, lit only by the 5 candles she'd scrounged from the junk drawer. The rain hammered against the windows. The world outside disappeared. They got Lila settled on the couch under every blanket Sage owned. The little girl had fallen asleep almost instantly, one hand clutching Sir Reginald, the other holding a half-eaten cracker she'd refused to relinquish, even in unconsciousness. Then it was just them, Sage and Wren, in the flickering dark. The silence was thick, warm, charged with something that had been building for weeks. "So," Sage said, trying to break it before it broke her. "Alpha King of the Northern Kingdom, huh?" Wren froze, every muscle locked. His eyes flared silver in the candlelight, and for a second she saw something ancient and afraid behind them. "I'm kidding," she held up her hands. "It's a joke. You just have this regal vibe, like you're secretly the king of some small, very serious European country." The tension drained out of him slowly, leaving him looking tired and impossibly human. "No," he said, "I'm not a king." It was a lie, but it sounded like a confession. They talked, for hours, while the rain turned the world outside into white noise. Not about anything that mattered on paper, her worst bartending shifts, his favorite books, history mostly, and a guilty love of spy novels that seemed to embarrass him. Lila's secret devotion to pickles. For the first time, the brooding mask dropped. He told her about trying to teach Lila to skip, and how it had ended with both of them face down in a mud puddle, and Lila had looked at him with such betrayal that he'd laughed so hard he couldn't stand up. And then quieter. She used to hum. Marin, Lila's mother. She hummed when she cooked. Always the same few bars. She said she'd forgotten the rest, but I heard her sing the whole thing once, when she thought she was alone. He paused. Candlelight moved across his face. Lila hums now, at your apartment, when she paints. Sage understood what he was saying, what it cost him to say it. She hummed today, Sage said softly, while she was painting the green wolf. Wren nodded. He was staring at the candle flame, and Sage watched him be somewhere else for a moment, in a kitchen that smelled like someone else's cooking, listening to a song he'd never hear finished. "I'm sorry," she said. Not, "I'm sorry for your loss," which was a thing people said when they didn't know what to say. Just, "I'm sorry." For the mug still in the cabinet, for the song with no ending, for the little girl's hands that looked like someone else's. She had a chipped blue mug, he said, almost to himself, with a fox on it. "I can't move it." "You don't have to." He looked at her then, really looked at her, and the candlelight made his silver eyes soft, and the rain made the world small, and something in the air between them shifted from tension to tenderness. "Sage," he said. His voice was barely a whisper. He reached out, his fingers tracing the line of her jaw. The touch sent fire cascading through her veins, and something deep in her belly, something that had been sleeping, something warm and new and confused, stirred. He leaned in. She could feel his breath on her lips. Her eyes fluttered closed. The lights came back on. The refrigerator hummed to life with the subtlety of a foghorn. The overhead fluorescent flooded the room with the romantic ambiance of a gas station bathroom. They sprang apart. And there, standing in the doorway to the living room, was Lila. She was holding her half-eaten cracker. Her hair was flattened on one side. And she was looking at them with an expression of such profound, unblinking judgment that Sage felt like she'd been caught committing a crime against the natural order. Lila looked at Sage, looked at Wren, took a deliberate bite of her cracker. The crunch was deafening. "Well," Sage said to the 3-year-old jury, "this is not what it looks like." Lila crunched again. The verdict was clear. It is exactly what it looks like, and you should both be ashamed of yourselves. The near kiss changed the air between them. The easy comfort was gone, replaced by something electric and careful. They moved around each other like magnets, drawn close, then snapping apart at the slightest contact. And underneath Sage's awareness of Ren, something else was shifting. It had been building for weeks, so gradually she'd written off each piece as a quirk, a coincidence, a weird Tuesday. Her sense of smell, always sharp, was becoming absurd. She could identify every ingredient in a cocktail by scent alone. She could tell when a customer was about to start a fight 60 seconds before they knew it themselves, something metallic and hot in the air around them, like pennies left in the sun. She wasn't sleeping well. She'd wake at 3 a.m. with the urge to pace, to move, to go outside and do something her body couldn't quite articulate. Her skin felt tight, not painful, restless, like she was wearing a suit that almost fit, but not quite. Ren became more protective, more present. He started showing up at the Gilded Glass during her shifts, sitting in a dark corner booth, nursing a single glass of water for hours, like the world's most intimidating teetotaler. Chloe was beside herself. "He's guarding his territory," she hissed over the jukebox. "You are his territory. I'm a person, not a zip code. A person he would clearly fight a bear for. Multiple bears. A whole bear army." But underneath the romantic comedy of it all, something darker was running. Ren's phone would buzz with messages that turned his expression to stone. He'd take calls in the hallway, his voice a low, dangerous rumble. He'd come back looking like a man carrying a weight she wasn't allowed to see. The breaking point came on a busy Friday night. Sage caught him staring at a group of loud customers with an expression that belonged on a nature documentary, the part right before the predator stopped being patient. She marched over to his table. "What are you doing here, Ren?" "I'm watching over you. Watching over me, or stalking me." She was tired, and her weird new super nose was giving her a headache, and the fluorescent lights behind the bar were too bright, and she'd been waking up every night with dreams about running on 4 legs through forests that didn't exist. "You're here every night. You brought me a fire extinguisher because my toaster looked untrustworthy. You can't insert yourself into my life and refuse to tell me why." "I'm trying to keep you safe." "Safe from what? Bad tippers?" He looked at her. His eyes were full of something vast and painful and desperately honest. "I can't tell you." "Right." The fight went out of her like air from a balloon. "You can't." She turned and walked away, and he let her go, because the truth would paint a target on her back, and the lie was the only shield he had left. And he was a king who had already lost one woman to the violence of his world, and he would die before he lost another. He didn't come back, not that night or the next. The silence was a physical weight. The following Saturday, the Gilded Glass was packed. Sage was running on fumes and espresso, her movements automatic, her mind replaying the look on Ren's face when she'd walked away. She'd pushed him, and he'd retreated entirely. Maybe that was it. Maybe their weird, impossible little world had finally... A man slid onto a bar stool in front of her. He wasn't one of her regulars. Tall, lean, with pale, watchful eyes, and a mouth that looked like it had been designed for cruelty. He moved with a predatory stillness that hit every alarm in Sage's body. And there were, she was discovering, more alarms than she'd known she had. His smell was wrong. She couldn't have explained how, but it hit her like a wall. Cold, metallic, oily, like wet pennies and something rotten underneath. Her nose recoiled, her whole body recoiled. Something deep in her chest made a sound that wasn't quite a word and wasn't quite a growl, just a low hum of wrong, wrong, wrong. "A glass of your best whiskey," he said, his voice a low drawl. His eyes moved over her. "You must be Sage. I've heard so much about you." "I don't know you," she said. Her hand tightened around the bottle she was holding. "But I know your friend, Ren." The way he said the name was a knife wrapped in silk. "He's been spending a lot of time in the human world, neglecting his duties. People are talking." Human world. The phrase snagged. Not the city, not here. The human world, as if there were another one. "I think you should leave," Sage said. The man, Ivar, though she didn't know his name yet, just smiled. "I'm just getting comfortable. See, I can't figure out what an Alpha King sees in a fragile little human like you." Alpha King. The words from her joke. The one that had made Ren freeze in her apartment, his silver eyes wide with something that wasn't amusement. It wasn't a joke. It had never been a joke. The world tilted. The noise of the bar receded, and then something happened. It started at the base of her spine, a heat, sudden and electric, like a current switching on. It climbed her vertebrae one by one. Her vision sharpened. The room exploded into detail she'd never asked for. Every face, every bead of sweat, every heartbeat in her immediate radius becoming suddenly, violently visible. The smells, beer, sweat, cologne, fear, the wrong metal cold of the man in front of her crashed over her in a wave that made her stagger. And then, from somewhere inside her chest, from a place that had been quiet her entire life, so quiet she hadn't known it was there, something woke up. It was not a dramatic awakening. There was no blinding light, no surge of ancient power, no mystical chord struck in the universe. It was more like an app installing, a new tab opening, a roommate she'd never met shuffling out of a bedroom she didn't know her apartment had, blinking in the light and immediately annoyed about everything. "What?" it said. Not a word exactly. A feeling shaped like a word, a vibration of pure, confused irritation radiating from somewhere behind her sternum. Sage gripped the bar. "What the?" "Loud," her wolf said, because that's what it was. She knew this with an instant, bone-deep certainty that bypassed every rational thought in her head. This was her wolf. It had been here the whole time, not sleeping exactly, but not quite awake, aware of the world the way you're aware of a conversation in another room. And now it was here, in the room, and it was overwhelmed. "Loud," it said again. "Bright. Why? Smells bad." That one, a spike of revulsion so strong, Sage's nose wrinkled involuntarily. "Smells wrong. Bite him." "I'm not going to bite anyone," Sage muttered. Ivar leaned closer, his pale eyes wide with genuine shock, then delight. "Well, I'll be damned. An unawakened Omega, right here in a dive bar." Her wolf's response was immediate and non-negotiable. A growl, a real one, deep and rumbling, vibrating up from her chest and out of her throat before she could stop it. It was the sound Lila had made at Officer Henderson, except louder, meaner. The glasses on the shelf behind her rattled. Ivar's smirk flickered, and something clicked in Sage, not the wolf, the bartender. 5 years behind this bar. 5 years of reading rooms, managing threats, cutting off the dangerous ones before they could ruin someone else's night. She didn't need to understand what was happening to her body. She just needed to do her job. She straightened up to her full height, which was not impressive, but she made it count. She set the bottle down on the bar with a deliberate, precise thunk. And she looked Ivar dead in his pale, predatory eyes. "You're done," she said. Her voice was steady, cold. The voice she used on men who didn't understand the first time. "Pay your tab, get off my stool, and walk out that door. You've got 30 seconds before I call every bouncer in this building and have you escorted out in a way that hurts your dignity more than your face." "Yes," her wolf said, with fierce, startled approval. "Good. More of that. Also, still bite him." Ivar studied her for a long moment. Something in his calculations shifted. He'd expected her to crumble, and instead she was standing over him, growling, glowing with a new power she didn't understand, and was somehow already wielding like a weapon. "Interesting," he murmured and stood. He dropped a bill on the bar and turned to leave. Then he stopped. "When you see your king," he said, "tell him Ivar says hello, and tell him the Blackwood pack doesn't forget what it's owed." He walked out. The door swung shut behind him. Sage's hands were shaking. Her wolf was doing something she could only describe as pacing, a restless, circular energy in her chest, sniffing at everything, filing things away, muttering a constant stream of reactions. Bad man gone. Good. Bar smells terrible. Why is everything so loud? The peanuts are stale. There's a mouse in the wall. We don't like the music. When is the pine smell man coming back? We want the pine smell man. Who was that? Chloe appeared at her elbow, eyes wide. "I have no idea," Sage said, "but I think I need to sit down." She didn't sit down. She made it through the rest of her shift on autopilot and adrenaline, her wolf providing a constant, unhelpful narration of the bar's sensory landscape. That man is sad. That woman is lying. The ice machine is dying. Someone burned the popcorn. The peanuts are still stale. Why has no one addressed this? When her shift ended, she walked out the back door into the alley, and Ren was there. He was leaning against the wall, his face a mask of barely controlled fury, and the second she stepped outside, his eyes locked onto hers with an intensity that made her wolf go instantly, embarrassingly still. "Oh," it said, then softer, "Oh, that's what that is." She could smell him from 10 feet away. Pine, winter, wood smoke, cold stone, and underneath, blazing hot and unmistakable, a fear so sharp she tasted copper. But not fear of something, fear for someone, for her. "Ivar was here," she said, not a question. "I know." His voice was raw. I knew something was wrong. I came as fast as—" "You felt it?" He stopped, closed his eyes. When he opened them, the last wall she'd ever seen him build was gone. "Yes," he said, "I felt it. And I have to tell you why. I have to tell you everything, and I need you to come somewhere safe so I can do it without putting a target on your back." She could have said no. She could have gone home, locked her door, and spent the rest of her life pretending this night hadn't happened. Her wolf had a strong opinion about this option. No, absolutely not. We go where the pine smell man goes. This is not a discussion. "Fine," Sage said, "but I'm driving." "You don't have a car?" "Then I'm choosing the music." Something broke in his face, relief, and underneath it, the beginning of something he hadn't let himself feel in a very long time. He opened the passenger door of his car for her, and she got in, and her wolf spent the entire drive cataloging every molecule of his scent with the devoted attention of a wine critic at a vineyard. The penthouse was ridiculous. Floor-to-ceiling windows, a view that made the entire city look like a circuit board, furniture that probably had its own insurance policies. Sage stood in the middle of it, still in her bar clothes, still smelling like beer and adrenaline, and felt exactly like what she was, a bartender from a second-floor walk-up who had accidentally wandered into someone else's life. Her wolf was less impressed. "Cold," it observed. "Big. No blankets. Needs more blankets. The couch is acceptable. We claim the couch." "Sit down," Ren said. "Please." She sat. He didn't. He stood by the window, his back to her, his reflection a ghost in the glass. The city glittered behind him. And then he told her everything. Werewolves, packs, alphas, a hidden world living in the shadows of hers. He was their king, the Alpha King of the Northern Kingdom, responsible for thousands of wolves in 4 territories. Ivar was a rival alpha who had taken Lila to send a message, and who had come to the bar tonight to send another one. "And you," he said, finally turning to face her. "You're an omega, Sage. A wolf whose shift has been dormant. The things you've been feeling, the smell, the restlessness, the dreams. The dreams about running on 4 legs? He nodded. The part where I can smell that your housekeeper uses lavender detergent? And you had coffee 4 hours ago, and you're terrified right now, but also you smell like... She stopped. She didn't have a word for the last part. Her wolf did, but she wasn't ready for that word yet. Your wolf woke up tonight, he said, triggered by the threat, by Ivar. Sage looked down at her hands. Normal hands, no claws, no fur. But inside her chest, her wolf was sitting very still and very alert, paying attention to everything. He's telling the truth, it noted. His heartbeat is steady. He smells like grief and fear and something he's trying very hard not to name. Also, his shoulders are exceptional. Is it going to keep doing this? Sage asked. The commentary? What is it saying? It has opinions about your shoulders. Ren blinked, his mouth opened, closed. For the first time in the entire conversation, he looked genuinely thrown. Your wolf, is already talking to you? Is it not supposed to? Most wolves take days to develop a distinct... He stopped, ran a hand over his face. Of course yours is already opinionated. Of course it is. It also thinks your couch needs more blankets, and that the peanuts at my bar are stale. It's been thorough. And despite everything, the revelations, the danger, the fact that his entire world had just been upended, Ren laughed. A short, helpless sound. The laugh of a man who had prepared for tears, for horror, for rejection, and had gotten instead a woman whose wolf was already filing interior design complaints. But the laughter faded, and Sage felt the real question rising, the one that had been forming since the moment her wolf had opened its eyes in the back of a dive bar. If I'm a wolf, she said slowly, then why didn't I know? Why didn't I present or shift or whatever it is that's supposed to happen? I'm 26. That's not normal, is it? Ren's expression shifted. Careful. No, it's not. Most wolves present in childhood, by puberty at the latest. For an omega to go this long without a shift, he paused. It usually means they were raised outside of pack, completely outside. No wolves in their life at all. No pack bonds, no proximity to other shifters. The wolf is there, it's always there, but without the resonance of other wolves around it, it stays quiet, dormant, like a frequency with nothing to tune to. Sage was very still. I was in foster care, she said, since I was 4. Ren looked at her, waiting. My parents died in a car accident, both of them. I don't remember much, I was too young. I have one photograph. My mom is laughing in it. My dad is looking at her like she hung the moon. She swallowed. No one ever came for me. No pack, no family, no one who knew what I was. I just went into the system. Group homes, foster families, aging out at 17. Her wolf was quiet, not commenting, just listening. The way you listen to a story you already know the ending of. Your mother, Ren said softly. She was the wolf. It wasn't a question. Sage looked at him sharply. How do you know that? Because your father didn't know. If he had, he would have contacted a pack before they died. He would have made arrangements. The fact that no one came for you means no one in his world knew what you were, and no one in hers knew you existed. He was quiet for a moment. She was probably trying to find the right time to tell him. Wolves mated to humans. It's not an easy conversation. Some wait years. She waited too long, Sage said. The words came out flat, matter of fact. The way you say something you've carried so long it's lost its sharp edges. But her wolf made a sound, small, low, aching, that suggested the edges weren't as dull as she pretended. So I grew up human, she continued. No wolves, no pack, no resonance. And my wolf just stayed quiet this whole time, Until Lila, Wren said. Sage looked at him. A wolf pup in distress? An alpha's scent? Pack proximity for the first time in your life? Repeated, sustained, weeks of it? Your wolf had something to tune to. Lila started it. The visits fed it. The bond between us. He stopped himself, but not before Sage caught the word he'd almost said. Bond. By the time Ivar triggered the fear response, your wolf was already close to the surface. It just needed one final push. Everything clicked. The sharpening senses, the restlessness, the dreams of running, the way she'd known things about people through smell that she shouldn't have been able to know. It hadn't started at the bar. It had started the day a little girl with silver blue eyes had slipped her hand into Sage's and held on like she'd found the thing she'd been looking for. So Lila didn't just find me in those woods, Sage said quietly. She woke me up. She woke you both up, Wren said, and the look in his eyes was so raw and grateful and specific that Sage had to look away before it broke her. Why didn't you tell me? She asked then. All those visits, all those afternoons. He sat down then, across from her, not next to her, giving her space she hadn't asked for but maybe needed. My world killed Marin, he said. The name came out rough, like a stone pulled from deep water. Leela's mother, my first mate. She was targeted because of me, because loving a king makes you a target. He looked at his hands. I saw you, painting with my daughter, smelling like everything safe in the world, and I thought, if I just keep her separate, if I just keep her human, if I just don't tell her. You thought you could protect me by lying. I thought I could protect you by keeping you in the light. Wren, she leaned forward, I grew up in foster care. I've been on my own since I was 17. I've worked doubles on no sleep and managed a bar full of drunk idiots by myself for 5 years. I don't need to be kept in anything. I need to be told things so I can make my own choices about them. He looked at her, and she saw him, really saw him. Not the king, not the alpha, not the grumpy man in the expensive suit. A father who had lost the mother of his child and was so terrified of it happening again that he'd built a fortress of silence around the one person who'd made him feel something since. Marin's mug, Sage said quietly. The blue one with the fox. You still can't move it. No. You don't have to. I know. His voice cracked, just slightly, just enough. But I can't keep standing in the kitchen waiting to hear her hum. Sage's wolf was very quiet. Not commenting, just present, sitting in her chest like a warm hand on a cold night. Lila hums, Sage said, when she paints. Did you know that? She hums the same few bars. Wren's breath caught. His hands, folded in his lap, went white-knuckled. She has Marin's hands, he said, so softly it was barely there. I noticed 3 months after the funeral. Watching her stack blocks, small and square and decisive, and he stopped. I couldn't stand up. Marcus found me on the nursery floor at 2 a.m. This was it. The thing underneath the brooding, underneath the silence, underneath every unnecessary pineapple and every hour spent sitting in her bar pretending to drink water. A man who had been broken by grief and was being slowly, terrifyingly, rebuilt by a bartender and a toddler and a box of dinosaur-shaped chicken. Sage stood up, crossed the space between them, and sat down next to him, close enough that their shoulders touched. She didn't reach for his hand. She didn't say anything wise or comforting. She just sat there, her shoulder against his, and let the silence hold everything that words couldn't. Her wolf approved. This, it said, with a satisfaction that was almost smug. This is correct. After a long time, Wren spoke. You should be afraid of me. I'm not afraid of you. I'm afraid of the part where I apparently turn into a wolf, which, for the record, no one has adequately explained, and I have questions. You have several, Starting with, does it hurt? Do I get to choose when? Will my clothes survive? Is my apartment wolf-sized? What happens to my bar shifts? Can wolves eat dino nuggets? And most importantly, she looked at him with an expression that was equal parts fear and stubborn, unreasonable bravery. Are you going to be there when it happens? He stared at her. This woman, this bartender, this Omega, this ridiculous, brave, impossible person who had just learned she was a different species and whose first response was a logistical questionnaire. She is perfect, his wolf said. And for once, Ren didn't argue.
Yes, he said. I will be there.
And Leela?
Leela too.
And the wolf? My wolf? It's not going to, I don't know, eat the ficus? Your wolf will be you, Sage. Just more of you. She looked at him for a long moment. Show me. What? Show me. You keep talking about wolves and shifting and this whole hidden world. I'm sitting here with a brand new voice in my head that has opinions about your furniture, and you're telling me you turn into a wolf. So show me, because right now this could still be a psychotic break, and I need to know which one it is. Ren studied her. Then he stood, moved to the center of the penthouse's open living space, and began unbuttoning his shirt. What are you… Oh. She realized what was about to happen. Oh, right, the clothes thing. The clothes thing, he confirmed. He folded the shirt over the back of a chair with the careful precision of a man who had destroyed a lot of shirts before learning this lesson. The jeans followed. Sage looked at the ceiling, then at the floor, then at the ceiling again. You can watch, he said, and there was the faintest edge of amusement in his voice. It's not, it will be fast. She looked. The shift was nothing like she'd imagined. There was no cracking of bones, no horror movie contortion. It was more like watching water change state. One moment he was a man, broad-shouldered and barefoot on the hardwood floor, and the next moment something rippled through him, a tremor that started at his core and radiated outward. And then he wasn't a man anymore. The wolf that stood in Ren's place was enormous. Not dog enormous. Enormous, enormous. His shoulders came up to Sage's chest. His fur was dark, almost black, with a deep charcoal undercoat that caught the city light from the windows. His eyes were the same silver blue, and they were fixed on her with an intelligence that was unmistakably, terrifyingly, Ren. The same steady, intense regard, the same weight. He was beautiful.
And he was real. And this was not a psychotic break. Sage's wolf went absolutely berserk. Not with fear, with recognition. A sound erupted from somewhere behind Sage's sternum, not a growl, not a whine, something between the two. A full-body vibration of, yes, that one, that's the one, we know him, he's ours. So loud and so sudden that Sage clapped a hand over her own chest, as if she could physically muffle it. Oh my God, she whispered, shut up, shut up. Her wolf did not shut up. Her wolf was pressing forward against the inside of her ribs, straining toward the massive dark wolf like a magnet, broadcasting on every frequency it had. Ren's wolf, Ren, took a step toward her. His movement was liquid, silent, nothing like the stiff, controlled way he moved as a man. He lowered his enormous head and pressed his nose against her open palm. His fur was coarser than she expected, warm. He smelled the same, pine, winter, wood smoke, but concentrated, undiluted, so purely him that her knees actually buckled slightly. Her wolf made the noise again, quieter this time, reverent. Hi, Sage said to the wolf. Her voice was shaking. You're very large. The wolf huffed. It sounded, impossibly, like Ren being amused. Then the ripple again, and he was a man, crouched in front of her, one hand still pressed against hers. Naked and unself-conscious, and looking at her with an expression that held no walls at all. That's what it is, he said quietly. That's what I am. You're a giant wolf who smells like a Christmas tree, Sage said, and her voice cracked on the last word, because she was crying and laughing at the same time, and her wolf was purring like an engine in her chest, and nothing about this was normal, but all of it was true. He dressed. She processed. Her wolf provided a running post-game analysis. Large, very large. Good teeth. Excellent haunches. We approve. Okay, she said finally. Okay? Okay, but I have conditions. Conditions, he repeated, as if the word was in a language he hadn't studied. 1. You tell me everything. No more lies, no more watching over me without explaining why. If your world is dangerous, I need to know how, so I can make my own choices about how to be in it. Done. 2. Lila still comes to my apartment. I don't care if you have a penthouse the size of a football field. She likes my kitchen floor and my finger paints, and she is going to keep painting wolves that eat things, because it's good for her. She would revolt if I tried to stop her. 3, she paused, took a breath. You stop trying to protect me by keeping me in the dark. I'm not Marin. I'm not going to be kept safe by not knowing. I'm going to be kept safe by knowing everything and being smart about it. And if I'm really an Omega, and that means something in your world, I want to know what it means. The real version, not the watered-down version you'd tell a human. Ren looked at her for a long time. In the penthouse, the city glittered. In her chest, her wolf waited. Before he could answer, his phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen, and something cold and satisfied settled into his expression, a look Sage hadn't seen before. The king. Not the man, not the father, the king. He answered. Marcus? Sage couldn't hear the other end, but she could smell the shift in Ren, the tension in his shoulders unwinding by a single precise degree. He listened for a long moment, his silver eyes moving to the window. Where? A pause. Hold him. I'll deal with it in the morning. Another pause, longer this time. Then, unexpectedly, the corner of his mouth twitched. She did what? He hung up, looked at Sage. Ivar has been intercepted, he said. His wolves picked him up leaving the city. My people were waiting. Relief hit Sage like a wave, followed immediately by a spike of something fiercer. The man who took Lila. The man who took Lila, who came to your bar tonight to threaten the woman I... He stopped himself, started again. He's being held. The kidnapping of a royal heir is an act of war under pack law. His own pack is being given a choice. Surrender their alpha or face the full weight of the Northern Kingdom. That sounds... final. It is, Sage exhaled. Good. Ren studied her, and something shifted in his expression. Not quite a smile, but something warmer than she'd seen all night. Marcus also reports that the story of what happened at your bar is already moving through the packs. An Omega, a brand new, unawakened Omega, growled an alpha out of a bar in front of witnesses. Apparently the phrase, "pay your tab and get off my stool," is being quoted. I also threatened him with the bouncers. Yes, that detail is also circulating. Marcus says Ivar's own wolves are not taking it well. Being thrown out of a dive bar by a bartender who didn't even know she was a wolf is not the kind of reputation a rival alpha recovers from. Sage blinked. I humiliated him? You destroyed him. Politically, strategically, and, according to Marcus, who is enjoying this far too much, personally. His challenge to my authority was built on the argument that I had grown weak. Tonight, the woman he targeted to prove that weakness threw him out of her bar like a drunk who'd overstayed his welcome. He paused. You did more damage to his position in 30 seconds than my counsel could have done in 6 months of hearings. Her wolf preened. Obviously, it said, we are excellent at our job. Also, the peanuts at our bar are still stale, and someone should address this. So he's done? Sage asked. He's done. His pack will hand him over by morning, or they'll face consequences they can't survive. Either way, he will never come near you or Lila again. The certainty in his voice wasn't bravado. It was a promise delivered with the weight of a man who had the power to keep it,
and the will to make it absolute. Sage felt something loosen in her chest, a knot of fear she hadn't realized she'd been carrying since the pale-eyed man had sat down at her bar and said her name like he owned it. "Good," she said again. Then, "Now, where were we? I believe I was setting conditions." "You are extraordinary," he said, and it wasn't a line, wasn't charm, wasn't the smooth declaration of a king. It was the rough, unpolished truth of a man who had just watched someone refuse to be afraid and didn't know what to do with the feeling. "I'm a bartender who can apparently smell your emotions and whose new wolf won't stop complaining about your couch cushions. I'm not extraordinary. I'm just stubborn." That's what I said. And this time, when his hand found hers, tentative, careful, asking permission with every inch, she didn't pull away. She curled her fingers around his, and her wolf made a sound that was halfway between a purr and a sigh, and the rain started up again outside, tapping against the penthouse windows. They sat like that, shoulders touching, hands intertwined, while the city turned and the rain fell. Sage was just starting to feel something that might have been peace when the penthouse elevator chimed. The doors opened and Marcus stepped out, carrying a sleepy Lila on his hip. The little girl was in pajamas, her dark hair mussed, Sir Reginald the stuffed bear dangling from one hand by an ear. "She woke up," Marcus said, his voice carefully neutral. She was insistent. Lila's silver-blue eyes were half-closed, drowsy, unfocused. Then they found Sage. The change was instantaneous. Lila's eyes went wide, her whole body stiffened. She squirmed violently in Marcus's grip, making a sound that was half shriek and half growl. Reaching for Sage with both hands, Sir Reginald abandoned mid-air. Marcus set her down before she could cause injury. Lila took 3 running steps toward Sage, and on the 4th step, she wasn't Lila anymore. The shift was so fast, Sage almost missed it. A blur, a shimmer, and where a 3-year-old in pajamas had been, there was now a tiny wolf pup. Silver-gray fur, enormous paws she hadn't grown into yet, ears too big for her head. She was the size of a large cat, and she was moving at full speed, her 2 big paws skidding on the penthouse hardwood like a car on ice. She hit Sage's legs, bounced off, scrambled upright, and launched herself into Sage's lap with the grace of a thrown potato. "Oh," Sage breathed. The pup was warm, so warm. She weighed almost nothing, and she was vibrating with a full-body wag that involved her entire spine. She pressed her cold nose into Sage's neck and made a sound, a tiny, high-pitched whine that was so clearly, "I found you, you're here," that Sage's eyes filled. "Hey, Nugget," she whispered into the soft fur. "Hey, I'm here." Lila's pup form wriggled impossibly closer, her tail a silver blur. Then she sneezed, directly into Sage's ear, shook herself, and immediately began chewing on the collar of Sage's shirt. Sage laughed. It came out wet and raw and real. "She can shift back on her own," Wren said quietly, watching them. "When she's ready. It might take a while." It took 45 minutes. Leela spent 30 of those minutes as a pup in Sage's lap, alternately napping and gnawing on things. The couch cushion, Sage's sleeve, Sir Reginald's ear, and at one point, with focused determination, Wren's shoelace, while he was still wearing the shoe. The remaining 15 minutes she spent as a human toddler again, sitting on the penthouse floor in her pajamas, eating crackers that Marcus had produced from somewhere, and giving everyone the distinct impression that she had no intention of going back to sleep. Sage's wolf watched the whole thing with a hunger that wasn't about food. It was watching a pup. A pack pup. Their pup. And something in Sage's chest that had been empty for 22 years, since a car accident and a foster system, and a wolf who never had anything to tune to, started, very quietly, to fill. The first shift happened 3 days later. Wren had driven her to a clearing in the woods north of the city. Pack territory, he said, where they wouldn't be disturbed. Lila was there, sitting on a stump in her yellow sundress, eating a granola bar with the focus of a surgeon. Marcus was posted at a respectful distance, close enough to help if needed, far enough to give them privacy. The clearing was beautiful. Old pines, soft light filtering through the canopy, the kind of hush that felt like the woods were holding their breath. Sage stood in the center of it, in bare feet and an old t-shirt she didn't mind losing, and tried very hard not to panic. "It's going to feel strange," Ren said. He was standing close, his hands in his pockets, his voice steady. "Your body knows what to do. You don't have to think your way through it. Just let your wolf forward." "My wolf has been forward since the bar. It hasn't shut up in 3 days. It had opinions about my breakfast cereal this morning." The cereal was stale, her wolf noted, like the peanuts. "Why does nothing in our life have an acceptable shelf life?" "Just breathe," Ren said. "And when you're ready, stop holding on." Sage closed her eyes. She could feel it. Her wolf, right there, right at the surface, pressing against the inside of her skin with a patient, insistent pressure. It had been getting stronger every day. Not uncomfortable, more like a hand resting on a door, waiting for her to open it. She breathed in. Pine. Earth. Ren's scent, steady and warm. Lila's bright note carried on the breeze. The woods themselves, ancient and patient, and full of things that ran on 4 legs and had never once questioned what they were. She breathed out and let go. The shift was pain and release in the same breath, a compression, a stretching, her bones rearranging themselves with a grinding intimacy that was deeply, viscerally wrong, and then suddenly, completely right. It lasted seconds. It felt like hours. And then it was over, and the world was different. Everything was more. The colors had shifted, greens deeper, blues washed out. But the smells were a symphony, a cathedral. Every pine needle had a biography. The earth beneath her paws, told a story of rain 3 days ago, and deer passing through at dawn, and Ren standing in this exact spot an hour earlier. She was low to the ground. She was covered in fur. She had a tail. Finally, her wolf said, and for the first time, they weren't 2 things. They were one thing, with 4 legs and a nose that could read the history of the world, and the overwhelming, knee-buckling urge to run. She took a step, then another. Her legs worked differently, 4 of them, moving in a pattern her human brain didn't understand, but her body executed perfectly. She was smaller than Ren's wolf form, leaner. Her fur, she somehow knew, was a warm brown, the color of her hair translated. She looked up at Ren. He was watching her with an expression she had never seen on his face before. Not the brooding intensity, not the careful control. Something cracked open and wondering, like a man seeing the sunrise after a year underground. "Sage," he said softly. She tried to say something back, and what came out was a bark. A short, sharp, surprised bark that startled a bird out of a tree and made Lila drop her granola bar. "That was not what we intended," her wolf observed, mortified. She tried again. Another bark, louder, more indignant. She could feel her ears, flattening against her skull in embarrassment. From the stump, Lila giggled. A full, bright, bubbling sound that rang through the clearing like a bell. Sage's wolf forgot about the barking. It forgot about embarrassment and fear and the strangeness of having 4 legs. It heard that giggle, the giggle that had been silent for 6 months, the giggle that had started in a paint-smeared apartment over dino nuggets, and its whole body oriented toward the sound, like a compass finding north. She trotted over to Lila. Her legs were getting the hang of it now, still a little uncoordinated, still making her feel like a newborn deer, but functional. Lila reached out and buried both hands in Sage's fur, her small square fingers, Marin's fingers, gripping tight. "Sage," Lila said, clear as a bell, not a whisper, a declaration. Then Lila shifted too. 1 second a girl in a sundress, the next a tiny silver-gray pup, tail wagging so hard her whole body vibrated. She yipped, a high, piercing sound of pure joy, and took off running across the clearing, with the boundless, directionless energy of a toddler who has been told the world is her playground. Sage's wolf didn't think about it, didn't weigh the options, didn't consult a list or ask for directions. It ran. She ran. Across the clearing, through the dappled light, chasing a tiny silver pup who kept looking back to make sure she was following. The wind was in her fur, and the earth was under her paws. And her wolf was singing, not the confused, overwhelmed babble of the bar, not the running commentary of the last 3 days, but a single, clear, sustained note of pure, uncomplicated joy. Behind them, standing at the edge of the clearing, Ren watched his daughter and his mate run together through the woods for the first time, and something that had been frozen in his chest for 18 months cracked open and began, very slowly, to thaw. From the stump, Marcus watched the alpha king cry and pretended to be very interested in a pine cone. And 2 wolves ran, one small and silver, one brown and new, and the woods held them the way woods have always held wolves, gently, patiently, like they'd been waiting. "Home," Sage's wolf said, running through a world made of light and scent and a little girl's laughter. "Home."